Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Our topic tonight is the Liberian woman, and our guest is Mrs. Vivian Fahnbulleh Seton. Mrs. Seton, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. And
we are so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here too.
All right. So this is Mrs. Seton. She goes by so many, I don't know. I'll try to introduce you. I hope I get it. She's a former anchor woman of ELTV, that's the Liberian National Television Station. Also a former hostess on Letter to Liberia on the VOA. She was on the VOA hosting Letter to Liberia. She was a professor at the University of Liberia and also the Catholic University of America. She's the publisher of America, the publisher of Lady Magazine. She's an advocate and also a humanitarian. Not forgetting, she's also a mother. Once again, Mrs. Seton, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis, and thank you for all of those wonderful accolades you've given me. I hope I will live up to them, okay?
Thank you. And we want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. To those in every part of the world, if you are watching us by Facebook, we are glad to have you. We appreciate you. This is a special edition of the Liberian Woman, and I'm positively sure you're going to like it. Mrs. Seton is also, I don't know, multi-linguist. She speaks so many languages. And if you were on Facebook and you watched the flyer, she said it in like 5 or 6 different languages. Mrs. Seton, am I right?
Yes, I try to, yes.
All right. So before the show started, I want to say welcome to everybody. So if you don't mind, you can also welcome our viewers in those languages and let us know the language. Something like, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Or okay, you are watching Focus on Liberia. Anyone?
Okay. I'd like to, of course, welcome my Liberian brothers and sisters first. Okay. So right. I will say it in Liberian English. My people, Yahaduya. And I'm so happy to be with you tonight. Okay. Then I would like to say it in Vai. I'm from the Vai tribe. Namwenu, Wosewe, Obaika. And I would like to say in Bassa, Muere. And I would like to say it in Gio, Pabwa. If I say it in Loma, Issa. And if I try to say in Bende, Bisia. And I could say it in some others, but I think you've gotten the point.
All right. That's...
Let me say it in German.
Okay.
Guten Abend. Willkommen zu Focus of Liberia. And if I try to say it in French, bonsoir, bienvenue à Focus au Liberia. And if I say it in Italian, bienvenuto a Focus su Liberia or Liberia. If I say it in Spanish, buonasera, bienvenidos a Focus o Liberia. I think I have exhausted. I can try to say some others, but I think we've gotten the point so far.
All right. And so thank you so much for, again, being part of the show tonight on a very short notice. Our topic tonight is the Liberian woman. And to some people, this may not be an ordinary topic. So help us understand, help my viewers understand the importance of this discussion tonight and why is it so dear to you, the Liberian woman?
Well, thank you for the question. And this is a topic or subject that is very close to my heart. Of course, I hope I'm a woman. So I'm very concerned about what happens to my sisters, not only here in America, but also in Liberia and across the world. And I belong to many organizations that are created to help the woman grow economically, socially, academically, financially, and in many other spheres. I've been very interested in what happens to women. I was born to an exceptional woman, and I've always had women in high regard. I'm interested also, or very much interested in what happens to the woman in Liberia in particular, and in Africa in general. And I've watched what takes place in the world to women. That is why I also started a magazine for women. So this is a topic that is constantly on my mind. I'm in the process of writing a book on Liberia. I've written some others, but this one pertains to the Liberian woman. I called it Lapa to Skirt, or Lapas to Skirts, because the Liberian woman originally wore lapas, but now things have progressed, transformed, and now they wear skirts. Of course, lapas, some of them still wear lapas, some of them wear both lapas and skirts, some of them wear pants, some of them wear hot pants, different kinds of clothing, and some of them only wear skirts. So to cut all of this transformation short, I call the book Lapas to Skirts. And that's the history of Liberia, but from the woman's standpoint, how women influence society, the role of women in society, and the role of women for Liberia, for the future of Liberia. If Liberia is to survive or come back, the women have a major role to play in that process. And so this is why I would like to look at the topic and see what we can do and how we can get our sisters, especially the young women of Liberia, involved in bringing Liberia back.
Great. Is there a light there that is flickering?
It's possible. Let me see whether this one is no, not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Not to my knowledge. Okay.
All right, that's fine, and okay. That's beautiful. So, before we even get into the topic on Liberian women or the Liberian woman, I want you to briefly talk about 3 women, starting with you, your mom, and your grandma. Those are 3 women, and I want you to do that. Watch when you were at the Library of Congress, a video of you that I watched, and it's an autobiography of your mom that you wrote. So I just want for my audience to get introduced to these 3 distinct women. That's you, your mom, and your grandma.
Okay. My mother wrote the autobiography when she was in school in America in the 1930s. She attended Fisk University, Lane College, and Boston University in Brookline, Massachusetts. So while she was at Fisk, she had to write a paper, and her professor asked her to write her autobiography because he felt, being from where she was, that the book would be very interesting. She wrote the book, but she didn't have the opportunity to publish it because she went back to Liberia. And so we held on to this manuscript for many, many years. And then one day I got a call from a professor at St. John's University in New York, and he suggested that we publish the book. So it became a major undertaking. We started it in 2003, and the book was published finally in November of 2013. So it took 10 years. And I have about 6 different manuscripts, so many boxes with papers pertaining to this research. My mom was an extraordinary woman, and I love her very much. And I'm her only child. And so I inherited a wealth of knowledge from her. She was a mother to many people. And in my view, she helped shape Liberia, not only from the educational standpoint, but also from the social and, of course, economic and financial standpoint. She returned home to But let me go back to her birth. My mother was born the daughter of Momalu Massaquoi. The Vai people call him Momofu, Momalu the Fourth, when he was king of the Galinas, king of Gindima, and king of Sherbro. The Massaquois migrated from Mali in the 12th century from a place called Timbuktu to the West Coast. Of course, you know that Timbuktu is one of the oldest universities in the world. So it's not surprising that we like book, quote unquote, book business, okay? And our ancestor Kamara or Kamala the Great ruled the Sungay Empire in Mali. And so he had 500 wives. In Africa, monarchs always had a lot of wives. And so every year they will have a feast and they will call the oracle to ask the oracle what would happen to their kingdom. Mali was very powerful in the Middle Ages. It was even more powerful than some European countries. So they called the oracle, and the oracle said, well, Kamala, you have all these children, but your youngest son, you can't let him stay here. If you let him stay here, you will not have a kingdom because this young man will try to usurp power from his older brothers, and it will be a problem. You have to send him away. And we suggest that you send him to the west in search of salt. So Kamala the Great and his court, they outfitted his younger son. His younger son was called Jomani. They outfitted Jomani and they gave him a lot of horses, camels, and a whole army to go with him to the west in search of salt. Because, you know, in those days in the desert, salt was more powerful than gold or more precious than gold. So 11 of his cousins agreed to accompany him to the west. So they traveled, and in those days, the caravan, the women and children went along, soldiers, thousands of people went on this trek to the ocean. They traveled for many, many moons, and finally they reached the Atlantic Ocean in a place that is now in Sierra Leone. It's called Koiji, meaning salt water. So they got to Koiji, and Kamala was riding this white horse, and he dismounted from the horse, and he went into the ocean, and he got back on the horse, and he led his horse into the ocean 7 times. So when the people realized that they had reached their destination, they fell before him on the sand, and they said, Manja, Masagoni Muila. In other words, Master, thou art truly a great leader. And that's where the name Masakoi, old leader, revered leader, that was his name, was born.
No, say that again. Masakoi.
Masakoi, Masagoni Muila. Master, Manja, right? Masa is the master in most African languages. Okay, Masa is the master. Master, thou art truly a great leader. You are an old leader, a revered leader, a powerful leader, all inferred in the name. When I was in Paris in school, I met some Malians, and at the time, my uncle Nathaniel, Dr. Nathaniel Massacre, he was the Secretary of Education of Liberia, Secretary of Public Instruction, and he was one of the founders of UNESCO. And on 2 occasions, he was the Secretary General of UNESCO's General Assembly. So one of the guys introduced me to the group and said I was Massaquoi's niece. When he said it, all these people stood up. So I asked them, I said, why are you guys standing up? You know? They said, oh no, you're from royalty. I said, how do you know that? They said, we can tell from your name. Masakoi. It means that you're the old master, you're the powerful master, the revered master. So that's when I learned a little bit of Bambara and Malenke, all of that in these, it's implied in these languages. So anyway, the group, when they were traveling to the west, when they came to the forest, these people had never seen forest like that because Mali is desert or savanna, but so they hadn't seen forests and they hadn't seen wild beasts. So they were afraid. Some of them were very afraid to traverse this forest. So Jomali said to them, he said, okay, those who don't want to go ahead with me, you can stay here And in Vai, to stay means Kono, wait for me. And that's where the Kono people came from. They are the waiters. They're the people who wait. And the Vai people are the people who were trying to fight. Those are the people who go ahead, who forge ahead. They are brave, they are strong, they are adventurous, they are leaders. So that's where the names of these tribes come from, the Kono and the Vai. So anyway, the Vai people went to the ocean, and Kamala and his 11 cousins um, settled what we call Sierra Leone now in Liberia. So you can tell that they are related because we have in Kipma, we have the Kiahon, the Kia Zulu, the Kia Wayne, the Kia Wu, the Kandakai, the Kia Di, the Kia Zulu, the Kia Tamba, the Kia, 11 of them, okay? So we can tell from this that they are in Malenke, the Kia means the spear. So all these people had spears because they were going on a trek and they thought they were going to have to fight a war. So all of them had spears, and their names mean to bear spears, right? Kia Tamba is the guy who carries the spear. So you can tell that all of them are related. So that's why the white people say we are related, because we all have the same the connotation of our names. Okay.
Right. So wait a minute. First,
yeah.
Kono is the Vai people in Sierra Leone because they have to wait, and to wait means Kono.
If Kono means wait, Kono means wait for me. Yeah.
Right. Then the Vai that left and went to Cape Mount, they are like they proceeded.
Yes, they went to Sierra Leone, and then from there, then of course they spread out. They went to Cape Mount, to the Gaula district, the different districts they established, and they married Gola women and the women who were on ground, the women whom they met. So that's why they established all these areas in Cape Mount.
So if Zulu was carrying spear, he's Kia Zulu. If Tamba carries spear, he's Kia Tamba.
Yeah, Tamba. All the different. So when you meet 5 people now, you know where all of these names come from.
Okay? Right. That's very interesting.
Yes. So so they stayed there, and of course the oracle had foretold that the Massaquois would rule for a long period, but that their kingdom will come to an end when one of them embraces another religion. And it happened. The Massaquois ruled that area for many generations, and but my grandfather's kingdom came to an end when he became a Christian. He embraced Christianity. So that's when they came to an end.
Meaning they were Muslims?
Yeah, they were Muslims. Yeah, okay. But even before becoming Muslims, they were another religion. Okay, the Massaquois had migrated from Egypt many centuries ago. When the Egyptian empire fell, some of the pharaohs and the rulers of Egypt went to Libya, and some of them went to Tunisia. Some of them went down the Nile to Sudan, and some of them crossed the Sahara and went to Mali, what we call nowadays Mali, the Songhai Empire. So, but of course, migrations took hundreds of years. Okay, so the Massaquois are descended from that group of people that were in Egypt. And we have done, a lot of people have done studies on them, but that's a whole different topic, okay?
So what's that? So the Liberian diplomat that was in Germany, that's the same Massaquoi you were talking about?
Yes, sir. The diplomat who was in Germany was my mother's father. His name was called Momolu Massaquoi.
Yeah.
And he was the son of Lahai. Of course, every ruler has his own name, okay? His father was called Lahai Kandakai, okay? Lahai. So because he fought with spears, he went to Takoradi to Ghana to study the art of warfare. So and then and he was the son of King Mana. And Mana, of course, we all know, the Sierra Leoneans can tell you, and the white people, he fought wars against the British. If you go to the place called Galinas in Pujehun district in Sierra Leone, you will see cannons, okay, there, because they fought the British. And you go to Sierra Leone, you go to Bo, you go to Buff, you go to several islands, you will see the cannons there they bought from the British to fight the British, okay? So to make peace with the Massaquois, the British gave them a crown, and that's why the Massaquoi crown which is now in a place called Blama Massaquoi in Pujehun district. It's the only crown like that in Africa. Africans don't wear crowns, but the British, to appease the Massaquoi king, they give them a crown.
If you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian woman. My guest is Mrs. Vivian Fahnbulleh Seton. She's joining us from the state of Maryland. So, Mrs. Seton, that was about your mother.
Yes.
There's also a history about your grandmother.
Yes. Can I just say that the Massaquois, the thing the Massaquois will be remembered for more is that they encouraged the arts in the kingdom. And the Vai people are the only people in Africa outside of the Sahara who have their own script. And the Massaquois encouraged the development. There was a man, a priest by the name of Dualu Popele. He dreamed that the script was written on the sand or in the sand, and he remembered the different characters. So he developed the script in a place called Jondu. That's where the script was developed. And of course, there's a group of people in the Cameroon, and they have a script based on the Vai script, and it's called Bamoun. But originally, the Vai people are the only people in Africa south of the Sahara who have their own script. So anyway, my grandfather, again, was a descendant of the Massaquois, and he married a woman by the name of Massa Sonja, and they had my mother. That was the only daughter or the only child that my grandmother had. And so my mother was born in a place called Teleyoma, which means that on the Black River, okay, in Sierra Leone. But it's the British who said that the Mano River is the boundary between Liberia and Sierra Leone. These were all one big family, one Vai, Mende, and Chimney. All these people were, and these people are one big tribe. That's the British who said this is Liberia and this is Sierra Leone. But before then, it was one big kingdom. So she was born in Teleyoma, and then when she was a little girl, after her father abdicated his throne in Sierra Leone or in the Galines, he went to Liberia because his mother was a Liberian. His mother was a woman they called Famata Gola Fale Sandemani. Her name was Gola Fale, and she was Bandi and Gola. But she adopted the name Sandemani because she encouraged the Sande, okay? But because she revered at the Sande and she encouraged it and built the Sande up, so they call her Sandemani, the woman who has the wish for the Sande. She fought many wars. She used to go to war herself. She fought what they call the Sofa War. She fought when her husband, the Massaquoi, her husband died, and he was the king of the area called Bendu. His brother wanted to become king. She said, no way. She fought him, and she was very victorious in war. And she was very feared. The Gola people called her Tala Dogba, meaning brave heart. She fought men. She would take up the spear and go to war. In fact, the American, the America in those days didn't have an embassy in Liberia. They had a legation. And the man who was in charge of the American legation wrote a for that he met her, and she was a very fierce woman. And she reminded him of a woman called Jeanne d'Arc in French history. And you see, she was the Jeanne d'Arc of Liberia. And European explorers used to come to Liberia to meet her. A man called Johann Bütikofer went to Jagbaka, which was her headquarters in Cape Mount. He went to Liberia twice, and he wrote 2 volumes of a book called Travelogues to Liberia. And he met her, and he said of her that he had met all the European heads of states and kings, but there was none as dignified as this woman sitting up in the bush there in Liberia. So those are the people who gave birth to my mother, and she always had that feeling that she had to do something for her country. And she also instilled this feeling in me that I always have the feeling that I have to do something for Liberia.
2 women. And this woman was fighting. I've never heard a woman king who's fighting.
Oh yes. People when they heard she's coming, they'll run and hide in the bush. because they were afraid of her. She was fierce. She was a brave woman. She didn't she would fight wars, and her husband Arma died, and she fought wars and took over his kingdom, most of the Vai country. And she was Bandi and Golai and Vai by ethnicity.
Good.
And she had my grandfather on the battlefield in a place called Kwao Sao, is right in Cape Town. And she buried they had his umbilical cord buried under a cola tree in a place called Kwao Sao. I went there in 1972. I took some American explorers and researchers there and to see the place and make maps of the area.
All right. You talk about your grandmother, your mother. I know you're not too comfortable talking about yourself, but if you can briefly, let's start with how you learned those languages. Maybe that will give us an idea of who is Mrs. Seton.
Well, I always say I'm my mother's daughter. My mother, when Mamadou Massaquoi abdicated his throne, he left Sierra Leone and came to Liberia. And first, he was a businessman. So he had what they call the Vai Development Company, VDC, down waterside. And he was an importer and exporter. He imported goods from Europe. He traveled to London and Germany doing business. And he exported cassava, you know what they made brooms out of in those days. This crop, this rattan. He exported cassava and some other things from Liberia. And then he entered government service. First of all, he became the first Liberian-born principal of St. John's Mission in Cape Town. He did that for a couple of years, and his first cousin, Mamadou Gardner, became the first African-born bishop of the Episcopal Church. And his church was in Cape Palmas, and he built St. Mark's Church in Harper. So anyway, my grandfather was the principal of St. John's. And then later on, he joined Liberian government service, and he became commissioner at large. And in 1914, the Lomas, the Bandis, the Beles, and all those tribes had not joined the Union. They had not joined the Republic. So they sent him because he spoke Bandi, he spoke Loma, he spoke Bele, he spoke Kisi, and he spoke all the Liberian languages. So they sent him up to make peace with the Lomas and invite them into the Union. So he went to Lofa. When he got to Lofa, in those days, the towns in Lofa were fortified. For example, towns like Fisebu and Zida, they had walls around them, and they didn't let people in. If you wanted to come to this town and you were not from there, you have to fight yourself your way into those towns. So he spoke his Loma. He was a member of these societies, the Poro, the Suke, the Sumuyaya, and the Gweli. He was members of those societies. And he told them, he said, look, you guys cannot be here. You have to join the Republic. And they listened to him, and they joined the Republic. And when he was coming back to Monrovia, he brought a lot of Loma people with him. And that's why in those days, the members of the Liberian army were mostly Loma, or what we call Buzi people. And a lot of them were called Massacre because they took on his name. So anyway, so when he was commissioner at large, and then later on, when President King was elected president of Liberia, he appointed my grandfather the first Liberian diplomat, and he was sent to Germany as minister consular and consul general stationed in Hamburg. And of course, he took my mother with him, and she attended schools in Hamburg, and she learned German and French and Italian and she played the violin and like a concert pianist and a concert violinist, and she learned a lot about German culture. She learned to speak the language very fast, and she was the translator for the family until they could learn German. And her mother, Rachel Johnson, she being a woman, and I believe in women. Women have certain aptitudes that men don't have. They learn languages very quickly. So Rachel learned German, and the women were translators for the family, and they helped the family assimilate to all things German. So my mother attended schools in Germany and Switzerland, and of course I would say the old man, our grandfather, was minister consular. In other words, he could make decisions. He didn't have to refer or confer with Monrovia before he made major decisions in those days. And he was consul general in Hamburg, and he was also the Liberian representative at the League of Nations, which was in those days situated in Geneva. So my mother went to school in Geneva and in schools in Hamburg. And so when I was a little girl, she wanted me to go to school in Europe. She felt that I needed to learn the ways of the world. I needed to be educated. So in 1960, when I was just 10 years old, she took me with her to Europe and placed me in school in Hamburg. Of course, I was very, very homesick. Oh my God, because Hamburg is one of the coldest and damp. There's a lot of fog in Hamburg, and it's very damp, and it's on the North Sea. It's very windy, and I was very homesick. The food and everything was different, but she she played a tough heart. She said, "No, I won't let you come back home. You have to stay there until you learn what you went for." So I grew up in Germany. I used to go in the summers to Paris to learn French at the l'Alliance Française in Paris. And then later on, I went to Italy to learn Italian. And the rest of his history.
Hmm. 3 women. These are the women that Dench singing about. Wow.
Yes,
So,
of course, in Africa, we have a habit. In fact, the rappers here in America do it. They make songs to people, right?
yeah.
The rappers will compose songs to famous people. So they made songs to my grandmother and my great grandmother, and they made songs about my mother. And you've heard the song that Nyata recorded. Our cousin Nyata Fahnbulleh, Tata. She recorded a song called Fatou Jebe, right? And that song
Right.
was made for my mother because after she had attended schools in Europe and America, and after 22 years, she went back home. When she got off the plane, and she greeted her Vi and Mendy relatives in Vi and Mendy. And the people say, "Oh, Fatou Jebe, wana fasa." We were very happy that you stayed away this long and you came back speaking your language. Fatou Jebe na fasa. Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
so for this generation, when they are praising women, they call Jew. So this
Mhm.
like they say, Jew, you bad.
I've told you before that, baby, you bad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You fight on body back. You fight on body back. Look at your body. Look at your body. You fight on body back. You fight on body back.
So if I think of you, I think of your mother and grandmother. Then I remember what Dench said. Jupa, you bad. Oh.
Mhm. Yeah, of course, in the common language of today, when they want to say someone is good, they say the person is bad. You know?
Yes.
Yes. So yeah. So nowadays, you're not good, you're bad. Yeah.
So you bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was a quick. That's a segue to our topic today because you highlighted 3 women that will epitomize what you really want to talk about when you say the Liberian woman.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at those women, one who fought wars,
Mm-hmm.
one who was extraordinary in Germany, still with all the wealth, the
Mm-hmm.
glory, the power, still wanted to return home and impact.
Mm-hmm.
And now you went right into that same footstep. So tell me
Mm-hmm.
now, the Liberian woman, if you would look at that Liberian woman in total, what's her role in the Liberian society? And let's go back to the historicity of the Liberian woman playing that role.
Well, you see, as I said, I'm trying to write a book, and as you write in this book, you start thinking about certain things. You have certain historical facts, and you're trying to make sense of it, or you're trying to analyze it and rationalize it. So, when Liberia was founded in 1821, and of course, eventually it became free in 1847. So, when the freed American slaves left the United States to go to Liberia and form Liberia. Of course, before Liberia was called the Green Coast, and the Portuguese had settled there. And as you can tell from a lot of the names, the Cestus village or Cavala River, you can tell that the Portuguese had been there. So when they went there and to settle, they met, of course, a society there already and people living there. So Liberia is basically divided into two major groups of people. One are the indigenous people who were there when the settlers got there, and the other group was the people who came there. And as I can understand it, or as I can figure it out, the people who were there, they had the traditional schools, and basically the Sandy Society trained women and to become mothers, to become women in society, to become heads of household, and to be one major factors in society. Then on the other hand, the women who came there, they came with a certain other types of beliefs, the Masonic craft and the church and the state was their basic group. So these two groups now had to live together, had to merge, and had to cohabit and get along. Okay, so basically that's the Liberian society. So at first there were two groups of people separate from one another, and over the years, and through assimilation and cohabitation and some other interactions, they are becoming one. And this process is going on from day to day. And the more it happens, the more time passes, the more they become one. Okay, they become one through intermarriage. They become one because they go to school together. They become one because they work together and interact together. They go to church together. So the Liberian woman now has emerged out of this collaboration between the native women and the so-called American-Liberian woman. Okay, so the Liberian woman is a unique woman. She's exceptionally unique in the world, in my opinion, and I think she is a good example of womanhood. And because in the typical African society, if you look at other African countries, women didn't become westernized as quickly as the Liberian woman. Okay, the Liberian woman was one of the first to wear dress, quote unquote, to wear a dress. Whereas in other African countries, this process just took place quite a few years ago, not that long ago. In the 50s, when you went to places like Ghana, Nigeria, you didn't find, of course, when they go to the mission school, they will wear dress, but mostly when they come home, then they wear the African attire. Whereas in Liberia, the so-called educated woman or the civilized woman wore a dress, okay? And the native woman wore lapa. So, but over the time, these two cultures have converged and have become more or less one. So the Liberian woman was exposed early because here in the States, when she was living on the plantation, she had access to the master's home, and she learned certain finesses from the master or the wife of the master, having lived in the big house, in the plantation house. So she was exposed to certain factors, certain experiences that the so-called native woman hadn't been exposed to. So these all these cultures have merged to create the Liberian woman. The Liberian woman is basically very refined. I can't say this across the board, but basically the Liberian woman is a very refined woman. And it has proven itself. If you look at women all throughout Liberian history, I would just point out a few. Angie Brooks, she became the first Secretary General, the first woman Secretary General of the United Nations. We can look at some other Liberian women. Jane Roberts, the wife of the first president of Liberia, she went to London. She lived in Hyde Park, and she was a very good friend of Queen Victoria. And so many Liberian women, I can name hundreds of them, have represented Liberia, and they were pioneers in most of their fields. I can name so many of them, and it is not surprising now that Liberia was the first country in Africa to democratically elect a woman to be president of Liberia, or head of state for that matter, head of government. I think it all flowed out of the history and culture of Liberia, that was possible. Liberia had, my mother was the first interim president of the university. a woman. And then Liberia later on appointed Dr. Mary Antoinette Brown Sherman to be the first president of a university. That was the first time that had happened in Africa, that a woman headed a higher institution of learning.
Right. And Angie Broke was the first president of the United Nations General Assembly.
Yes, that she was. Yes. In
So,
1969.
But when you look at the Liberian woman, you said it has merged out of those two cultures. But what is highlighted mainly is that cultural clash, so that it kind of erases our African identity. Would you see it that way? That now we don't know who we are because we no longer maintain our Liberian culture. But you are looking at it another way.
Yes, you see, when the so-called settler came to Liberia, his aim, of course, was to bring the American way of life, if you can call that it, to Liberia. So they kind of looked down on, basically, I'm not saying everyone did, because there was a lot of intermarriage, but basically they looked down on the indigenous people, okay? And they tried to train them to be more or less westernized. So Liberian culture was suppressed. For example, in those days, you couldn't wear lapa, okay, and go to the mansion. It was not done, okay. So, and that's why my mother came in. She encouraged Liberians to appreciate their culture. She established the first African Studies program at the university, or any African university for that matter. And when she went to the mansion to see, when she was the interim president of the university, she had to go to the president of Liberia, and the security wouldn't let her come in because she had on lapa. So one of her students, his name was Bromskin. He told the security, he said, do you know who this woman is? Not because she has on a lapa suit means that she's ignorant. This is the woman who's the president of the university. So that's when it became possible for women to go to the mansion and wear lapa. It wasn't done in Tubman's time. It wasn't done before Tubman's time, and definitely up until then. And after then, it took a long time for it to become possible for a woman to wear an African outfit and go to the mansion. But my mother made that possible. Okay, and she encouraged Liberian society and Liberian culture. When she was in the States, she helped form the first African Studies program in America at Fisk University, and she helped a man by the name of Alonzo Turner research the language that is spoken by the blacks in America. If you go from one town to the other in America, or from one state to the other, and you listen keenly to how the black people speak, you can tell whether the man is from Louisiana or Mississippi or Georgia or North Carolina. Okay, so she because she knew African languages, she could tell what languages influenced the American way of speech. And they did this research, and that's why the American Library of Congress has her work there, and her recordings at the University, Indiana University, has her research. And that's why when she wrote her book, they were head over heels, because they were, they wanted to know how this woman did it. But when she graduated, she said, no, I can't be here in America. I have to go home and train my people. So when she got to Liberia, she found out there were a lot of prejudices and a lot of irregularities going on. The countryman, when he went to school, he had to adopt an English name. Okay, when the boys who attended in St. John's High School in Robertsport, the Fahnbullehs became Freemans, the Kiadis became Grays, and the Kandakais became Shermans. They had to adopt an English name to go to school. So, but when my mother married her husband, my father, Ernest Fahnbulleh, she begged him. She said, no, that's not your name. Your name is Fahnbulleh. So she asked him to change his name back to Fahnbulleh and give up the name Freeman. And so when she was teaching at LU, so everybody who went to LU had to have an anglicized name, okay? And in those days, they had to wear a black gown to go to chapel and to class. Now, the poor country boy couldn't afford he could barely afford the white shirt, and definitely not the black gown. So she abolished all of these rituals and customs when she was head of the university. Okay, and of course that didn't sit well with many people, but she did it. Okay, and it was difficult for the country boy to go to school in those days because first of all he had to come to Monrovia, he had to find a place to live, he didn't have the money, but she encouraged the the the, the, the indigenous boy to go to college and get an education, and those are the people who later went back in the interior and became principals of schools and superintendents of counties and supervising teachers, and that spread education to the masses. And on June 29th, 2002, the Unity Party of Liberia honored her as one of the legends of democracy. They called her the grandmother of the revolution, and they honored her here in Maryland among 12 men, uh, Billy Horrins and Christian Baker and all these other people, all the other men who, Frank Tar Grimes and all these other people who had been uh, uh, um, accused of sedition and treason and all of that. They honored them and fought, okay? And some other people, they honored them as legends of democracy, and they honored her as the only woman um, among the legends of democracy. So, yes, so people recognize what she did to bring Liberia into the 21st century. Because before then, the native boys couldn't go to school, they couldn't go to college. And she made it possible.
With that long history of the role the Liberian woman had played, you would expect that by this time, there will be a whole lot of Liberian women, but even now in the House, there's a fight for more women representation. There are still more things to cover. There's a widespread of rape, and all these things happening to women. To me, that seems like a contradiction looking at how far we've come.
Well, you see, there's a saying that war is no good, okay? And this is what happened to Liberia. Liberia was making steady progress. Each president that came into office tried to move Liberia forward, okay? President Tubman did a lot to bring Liberia into the 21st century, to open roads up in the interior, and to build schools for the masses to become educated. But when the coup took place, that threw Liberia back a generation. And since then, it has been difficult for Liberia to catch up to where and she left off. Um, for example, I have a place in Monrovia, and I have a man there who's been my caretaker. And this morning, of course, I get up 3 o'clock every morning. I get up early because I get calls from Liberia and Sierra Leone, Ghana, Guinea, wherever, Nigeria. So they call, because they're ahead of us, they will call me and, of course, wake me up. So I got a call this morning, and they said they had been to my place, and the watchman had been jailed. He was at South Beach, okay, because he raped a 10-year-old girl. Isn't that terrible? But you see, so I thought about it, and I said to myself, this question of rape is a big issue. It's a big problem in Liberia. You see, it's a cultural problem too. In the interior, the girl, when she becomes a young woman, her family, and mostly when she's a little girl, she will join the Sandy. So when she gets out of the Sandy, they will have a feast, and then they will invite the people from the neighboring villages and towns to come to this feast. Then, of course, the men will come and look at the young girls and decide that, well, I would like to marry this one, and then they will pay the bride price, and then the uncle or the aunt will come and court the family on behalf of her family so that the girl can become a wife of their son or nephew or whatever the case may be. But you see, nowadays, they want the girls to go to school. So when they go to school, well, they don't get married when they're 12 or 14 or 15. They get married when they're 18 or 20, or if they go to college, maybe 22, 25, okay? So now, so during that period, this girl is not, we have in law what we call la femme couverte. It's French. It means the covered woman. And it has a lot of implications. Because in Europe, in the Middle Ages, when the woman is married, she's covered by her husband. She's covered by his protection, his law. Okay, so so you cannot sue a married woman. You cannot sue a married woman unless in a criminal instance, if she has committed a crime, or if she's in the society and is doing business and is known to be a woman who has been standing on her own, then this adage or this law of la femme couverte doesn't apply. So you see now, in Morovia now, the girls are not married and they're living in society. They're nobody, they're not covered by a man. So the men feel that they have the right to abuse and sexually assault and rape and whatever the word would be. Young girls, when they see them, they're young, they look fine. So the men think this girl is a woman who is free for all. So that's when rape comes in my opinion. Because uh, women who try to fight for their future, try to go to school, accomplish something, open a business, and stand on their own, men think this woman is free. They can go and rape her and molest her and ravish her and abuse her and beat her and whatever the case may be. So I think it's a process that we're going through, trying to become westernized, that these things come accompanying this process of becoming, is part of it, of us becoming westernized. So the man does not understand that if he had sex with this little girl who is 10 years old, in his mind, he's not doing anything bad. Because in the interior, if she's 10 years old and she has become a young lady, he has the right to marry her. So in this case, now he's not married to her, but he's having sex with her. So he doesn't, in his mind, he's not committing a crime. Because from where he comes, you can marry a 14-year-old or 10-year-old if she's developed to that extent. So he's not, in his mindset, he's not committing a crime. And these are things that we have to educate our people about. We have to talk about it. We have to train them, and we have to change this mindset that when you see a woman in the street, she's your woman because she's not married. Okay, she's an unmarried woman, so I can do anything to her that I feel I want to do. And so this is what's happening in Liberia, in my opinion.
So is it that we are in transition, or is just a decay of of society?
Well, it is both. It is the transition from this indigenous society, and where the people come from up country, where they were governed by certain rules and regulations, and these regulations are were enforced in the village. You couldn't just go and rape any woman. Okay, now he comes to Morovia. Now he feels his chief is not there, his mother is not there, his father is not there, the elders are not there, so he's a free man. So it's a transition into becoming a westernized society.
If you just joined us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian woman, our guest, Mrs. Vivian Fahnbulleh Seton. Complete your thought if you are still talking. And we are about to open the phone line so that people, if you are you want to call, the number is 706-684-0392. So now, Liberia, at some point, we reach almost the peak of the development of our women when Mrs. Salif became president.
Oh yes, definitely. It sent a message to the world that Liberia is emancipated. The women have certain rights, and now one of us can come and be the head of state. It sent a clear message to the world that Liberia was avant-garde. Liberia was in the forefront of this women's liberation and women's empowerment movement. Well, it sent a clear message. I remember at the time I used to still work a little bit with the Voice of America. And first of all, when her name came on the news, okay, that this woman was part of running to be president of Liberia, they would call me. All these different news organizations, they would call me and say, Vivian, how do you pronounce her name? Because they had never, they were so fascinated by her. Okay, that's the phase that we went through. But what's going on in Liberia with this rape thing? It brings to mind what's happening in America in the gun issue with the guns. Okay, originally the American, when this country was established in 1776, and it's part of the Constitution that every American citizen has the right to bear arms for their protection. Okay, now if you know in America, some of the settlements are far apart. Okay, so people had to protect their home and their families against intruders. Okay, you have to you bear arms to defend your homestead. Okay, but now what's happening is that, and the question of buying arms is it's easy. Okay, yes, you do a background check, but basically it's easy. So now what's happening now is easy for young people to buy guns. Some people, of course, have some mental problems. They can still buy guns. They don't do that much of a background check. So these people have the guns now. What do you do when you have something? You want to use it, right? Why buy something when you can't use it? So you use it. So if it means that when you have it, then you take it and go shoot people. Okay, kill innocent people. You go to the Walmart, you go to the movie house, you go to the schools, and just shoot people. Yes, you have the right to have the gun, and if you have it, you use it. So that's just what happened in Liberia with the rape. Okay, it's this is a cultural and historical right people think they have, and when you have the right, you want to use it.
Mm. Well, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So what do you see looking ahead as because we've gone through this long period of the women being liberated, but as you said, due to the war and things like that, we've gone some steps back. How does the future look like for the Liberian woman?
Well, the future for the Liberian woman is wonderful. It is fascinating. It is clear. It is exciting. But there are certain things that have to take place. Okay, and with every right that you also inherit an obligation. No right is comes 100% free. There are certain things you have to do to be able to um, enjoy that right. Okay, so I believe that the Liberian woman is avant-garde. She's far ahead of many women in many countries. She has proven it. She dresses it. You know, she you can tell Liberian woman when she dresses that she looks good. She knows how to put the colors together and stuff like that. Yeah, she knows. When I went to Lagos in 1973, I went there. Um, when you be driving through Lagos, it will say on the duty um, palace, it will say Liberian trained. Okay, so we have it clearly boldly written across the door of the beauty salon in Lagos, Liberian trained. It means what? The women from Lagos went to Liberia to learn cosmetology, learn how to do hair and makeup and stuff like that. So the Liberian woman was always advanced. But when the war happened now, a lot of us had to go in exile to Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Guinea, the Ivory Coast, and some as far as Mali and wherever. So people, the high regard that they had us in, they started looking down on us because we came now as the people who were the underdogs. Okay,
yeah.
so that shifted things, and that made the Liberian woman feel too that she's not superior, she's not up there. So a lot of psychological things have happened in this transition from 1980 until now. But I think that the Liberian woman is still ahead, and with a little bit of encouragement and uh, um, social programs, she can be ahead again. She's still ahead, but she can be even more ahead. And I have the feeling that women being the head of homes, we have that inborn capacity to lead and to know right from wrong and to raise our children. And we are more, the woman generally, I don't know whether it's biologically or psychologically, we are more we are more responsible because we know that what we do will affect our children. So even if you give a woman a job, is mostly well done. I'm not saying every case not well. That most of the time, the woman is more conscientious. She has more stick to itiveness. She does it to the best of her ability. And the woman is the conscience of the society. Okay, and the woman is the one who will tell her children and her husband whatever you're doing is not right. And she, of course, she will not stand in the marketplace and tell him that he's doing wrong. But when he comes home, she will talk to him. Okay, and many times she uses certain methods to make sure that he listens to her. either, holding food or whatever the case may be. So a woman has that power, okay?
You said a woman is the conscience of the society. What does that mean?
Yes, like every society depends on a woman. The woman is the keeper of the earth, the keeper of the womb, the keeper of the fire. She keeps that and family hearth burning in Africa to cook food, but in the cold, in the temperate zone, she keeps the hearth to keep the house warm. If not, the house won't be habitable. So the woman is responsible for that. So I think if anything in Liberia has to change, and it has to change drastically, it's the woman who would do it. Women would have to do it. Um, Women will have to get involved in decision making, in running civil society, in running schools, hospitals, businesses. Like when you go to Nigeria or Ghana, you have these market women. Okay, they call some of them, they call them Mami Lori. Okay, the women run the economy. But even if you go up in the interior, you find that some women are very powerful business people.
And sometimes the West doesn't understand that, and so they call it by all kinds of names. For example, the women are the ones in the market, so just similar. So they run the economy, similar to men being on Wall Street in the USA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you find out that although the men run Wall Street, but some of the richest women in America, some of the richest entrepreneurs in America are women. A lot of women billionaires. Okay, because women have a certain, I don't know what the French says, je ne sais quoi. You don't know how to explain it. Women have a certain way of doing things, and it benefits them in the end.
Liberian women in the diaspora, USA, and things like that. There are still some challenges.
Oh yes, definitely. There are many, many challenges. Of course, when the coup happened in 1980, a lot of Liberians came to America, and when we came, a lot of it has to do what they call who won't work. We had to take jobs that were beneath us in education, but we had to start somewhere. We had to feed our family. Okay, but despite of this, a lot of Liberian women have good jobs in this country. They have jobs that bring with them a lot of responsibility, and the people know it, that when you get one of these women to work in your organization, you got a good worker. We have established that reputation. Okay.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about concerning the Liberian woman?
Oh yes, I would like to encourage Liberian women. I don't even think they need encouragement. They already know what they have to do. But I would like to encourage them in terms of saying I would like to support them to do what needs to be done, and to take a more leadership role. Okay, I mean, a lot of them are doing it, but basically to get more involved in civil society, to get more involved in business and education, and to become more even more than they already are, to just encourage to heighten their involvement, their scope. Okay, I think that has to be done. And you see, like, that's bounced back to be one of the best countries in the world. Okay, Liberia is a very wealthy country. Liberia has most of the minerals. Liberia is the only country in the world where it rains every month. Some countries don't get any rain. Liberia, it means, even if it's at night, you would just hear rain for a few minutes and it stops. Okay, but it rains every month in Liberia. And we have untold sources of water. We have untold sources of natural resources. Liberia is a rich country, but there are certain things that we have to do so that people don't come and just take from us and go. Okay, we have to put certain guidelines and safeguards in place. Okay, that people come and take and go. That we have to see how we can keep some of that.
There's an understanding that a woman has her place. There's a man I know who used to say, there can be two trousers in this house. In other words, So,
Yeah, but you even tell that to your children. Sometimes you tell your children. My husband used to say it to my sons. He said he would tell them. He said, you have on pants, but you think you and I can wear the same pants? You know. So of course, men don't like to be challenged in their authority. So they would tell the woman, and they would tell their children. Okay. And then he would tell my sons. He said that if you do it again, you and I will wear the same pants. Oh, then they would get scared. If we wear the same pants with daddy, oh my God, that can happen. You know. No. So yeah.
so right now, but what you made, what you're doing now, is it not encouraging two trousers in the house?
Well, since I don't have, my husband is not here. I have some of his trousers here with me. In fact, I have a closet that still have some of his clothes. Just out of sentimentality. But yeah, so my sons now are all men. Some of them are married, have children. So I call on them from time to time to help me with certain things so they can know and learn this idea of responsibility. And they're not just responsible to their so-called immediate family under their wife. They are responsible to the Seton family and to the Liberian community. And I do a lot in the community, and I ask them to help me.
Right. So as men, what can we do to promote or to encourage or enhance the role of the Liberian woman?
Oh, I think Liberian men are more or less very understanding, and they are open. They realize that some of the wives and most of the wives have ambitions, and they want to go forge ahead in life. And I think basically the Liberian man is supportive of his wife, even more supportive than some other tribes or ethnic groups or nationalities that I know of. Okay, I think that basically the Liberian man is supportive of his wife. But I'd like to thank him for being supportive and encourage him to become more supportive. Okay, and if possible, even more.
Good. Any final thoughts before we close our broadcast tonight?
Oh, of course, after we finish talking, I'll still think about our conversation and something might come to me. But as it is now, I think we covered all the topics. And I like to say, historically, if you read the history of the world, women have come to the rescue of their society. For example, in France, when the French and the British had a 100-year war, it was this little girl called Jeanne d'Arc in a place called New Orleans, the Nouvelle New Orleans in France. And she fought the British and won the war for France and reinstated, I think it was Francis II as King of France again. Women all through history. This Deirdre of Carthage in North Africa. Oh my God, the Indians, the American Indian, the Native American. Go to India, there are women all throughout history who help the Indian society. Look at this beautiful building called the Taj Mahal. Was built for the wife of an Indian Maharaja, and because his wife was so loving and caring, he built her this beautiful structure. I think in New Delhi, women, if you go Benazir Bhutto and all the women in history in Asia, some of the Asian countries, the women are the ones who brought their countries back from calamity or war or misfortune. If you look at Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, okay, she built a strong Russian society, and she encouraged the farmers in Russia to become more productive. Oh my God, if we can go, there are so many examples in history. So I think the Liberian woman can and will play a role in elevating Liberia and making Liberia great again.
Well, Mrs. Seton, I want to say thank you so much for joining tonight and speaking so eloquently about the Liberian woman and even delving into our Liberian history. I'm seeing comments on Facebook that they enjoy this so much, and it's very informative.
Thank you.
And we'll be glad to have you back.
Thank you.
So please don't hesitate to come back or to just let us know in case you have anything that you want to share with our audience.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I'll be happy to share it. I'm at heart, I'm a teacher because my mother was a teacher. And I don't know anything and I might be wrong, but I'll let you know what I don't know so we can sit down and discuss it, okay? And so I'd like to share if you want to ask me anything or if there's something that I can contribute, anything I can do. I see that they're trying to build a power grid in Liberia. So I contacted the people this morning, and to my great surprise, in 10 minutes they responded, and I'm very I look forward to that very much. I'm in touch with the people who do the solar panel. They have factories all over the place, and I'll see whether they can help us. I used to send books to Liberia and do things for my country that I felt was needed. And if there's anything I can do to help Liberia, I'll be very willing to do that. Okay.
Right.
Thank you
so
for
much.
inviting me.
Right. On behalf of my co-host who's not here, Mrs. Danielle Knuckles-Guishard, my guest relations manager, Mrs. Stephanie Setro, want to say thank you so much. And tomorrow we're going to be back here for another special edition. There are twin brothers that are in Liberian politics. We want to talk to them tomorrow. Then on Sunday, we are hosting some Liberian millennials. You know, they are incredibly smart kids. We want to talk to them and pick their brain on, you know, their experiences and how we can move our country forward. Until then, I want to say again, for all our viewers on Facebook, we want to say thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Mrs. Seton, for joining us. We'll end with the music of Sister, the legendary Fahnbulleh.
Thank you for having me.